Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Well, that was close. I almost forgot to put us on stage. Hello there. Justice Served TV, Michael Bryant here.
Linda Kenny Bodden, right here.
Look at this thing. I was just looking at this during my downtime. You know, my son's graduated from college. He and another recent grad are going to be rooming together in Pittsburgh for where his new job is. This is 52 pages. This is the lease agreement for the apartment these guys are getting together. Do you think any of these kids are reading this 52 pages to see what kind of handcuffs they're putting on themselves? It is outrageous. These complexes take such advantage of these kids. So luckily, that's my homework. I'll be looking at this thing and trying to. Oh, even better than that, because they have no work history. Most of them, nothing that matters. So guess who the third tenant is on this lease? Me. So I'll be hanging out Pittsburgh with the boys.
Pittsburgh's a beautiful city, but interesting. 52 pages. 52 pages? That's like a commercial lease. Who does
exactly? I mean, I haven't really dug into it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. And it's so onerous, and they got you by the short hairs, because what are you going to do? You're going to try and challenge some little nugget, and they're going to say, okay, we'll just rent it to somebody else. Thanks a lot. So, but as a parent, you go in, you know what you're getting into, and, you hope it all works out. Anyway, that's I don't know how I got into that. Just doing a little homework. We got other things to talk about today. Obviously, the Karen Lee case is coming up, right?
I can tell we got it because it's a P word. Pittsburgh. P begins with P. There's a there's a synergy here.
Oh, you're talking about the Proctor Factor? The Proctor Factor? Yeah, I think most interesting, we've talked about it before, is who's going to call former Trooper Michael Proctor? Who's going to call him, and how is he going to be used compared to the first trial, right?
I think the defense is going to have to call him. I think that
the defense is anxious to call him.
Yeah, but they're going to say, because he's no longer a trooper and employed by the state, that he's not an adversarial witness until he shows he's an adversarial witness, and he will get on the stand, because I think Hank Brennan is not going to call him. That's my guess.
Okay.
That's how I would try the case. And he's going to get on the stand. He's going to say, I'm just so sorry. I just did this. And he's not going to show. He'll be trained or sedated not to be adversarial, because he's no longer considered under the rules an adversarial witness. He's not employed by the state.
And as folks understand, if you're on cross-examination, you have that leeway to be leading and a little more argumentative. But if you call him as your witness on direct, you have handcuffs. Speaking of handcuffs, you can't lead. You have to do foundational questions, and it's a whole different level of examination.
Right.
Until there is some hesitancy or obstreperousness, as I like to call it, that allows you to at least ask that he be treated as a hostile witness. You got to get there, though. You don't get that out of the box. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting strategy, right?
And that's the word, hostile. He has to become a hostile witness. He's automatically in the rules of hostile witness when he was a state trooper. I don't think he's automatically a hostile witness now until he shows any hostility. Yeah. And it's going to be an interesting cat and mouse game, isn't it?
It is, and there's two things I'm thinking about. A, the state of Massachusetts law when it comes to a formerly, I guess, hostile witness, just by nature when he was a trooper, to someone who now is not, but acted in that capacity during the entire part of the case that's relevant to his testimony. So it's a very interesting little nuance. So that's one level. Then you have the Judge C level. What is she going to do? How would she interpret what Proctor says on the stand? Is it hostile? Is it not? Is she going to let him do anything he wants without declaring him hostile? I don't know. Those are two very different questions.
Sure, because that's within her discretion. If she may say, "Hey, you, Alan Jackson, no, you're hostile. He's not being hostile."
Yeah.
You can see that happening.
Yeah. So as a primer, as I like to say, to this second round, however it plays out, I thought we'd get into a little bit of his testimony. We can't do all of it, obviously, and it's full of nuggets, right? So let's look at a little bit of it, and we'll stop and start as we need, and just kind of get a sense of I don't know what might be to come. And of course, as usual, I have to try and find it, which is always the challenging part of my day. Where did I bury it? That's usually the question. I know it's here somewhere. Hold on, I'm going to find it. Again, Proctor was on the stand. How long was he on the stand for? 3 days? Does that sound right? That's
Right ahead,
Thank
Mr.
you, Your Honor.
Jackson.
Trooper Proctor, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind to turn to tab 2 in the binder in front of you.
Of course, this is Alan Jackson. This is cross-examination. What he has given the witness, Michael Proctor, is the binder that has most of the texts and other communications that he needs to refer to during his testimony.
Can you take a look at the face page of what's under tab 2 and tell me if you recognize that?
Yes, sir. It's
I'm sorry, Michael. It sounded like
a
a pig
private
oinking.
text thread with
What's that?
It sounded like a pig was oinking. It came from the courtroom.
Oh, I think it was the microphone picks up everything.
As a patient attorney, but twice.
I think it was. That's one thing this case does not seem to have, and that's livestock. But hey, who knows?
high school friends.
And this includes 9 participants, 9 chat participants that you engaged with.
That's correct.
Those participants include people by the name of Bird, Whitey, and Doc, correct?
Correct.
And then there's some other folks in there. They're identified by at least the last 4 digits of their phone number, correct?
Yes.
So this is a group text or a group chat with you and 8 of your high school friends about this investigation, correct?
Yes.
Trooper Proctor, you never thought when you were engaged with these other 8 individuals that this particular set of chats would ever become public, did you?
No, I do not.
I want to take a look at page 2527, if you could turn, that's on the bottom right of the document in tab 2. Do you recognize, do you have that page in front of you?
Yes, sir.
You recognize that this group chat was taking place on January 29th at about 10:52 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And the person that I'll identify as 5051, that's the last 4 digits of that phone number, indicates Chip, name of that BPD cop, correct?
Correct.
First of all, you indicated on Monday that you're Chip, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You responded at 10:53 p.m., John O'Keefe, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you were willing to tell, just a few hours into an investigation of the death of a Boston police officer, you were willing to tell a bunch of high school buddies details about the investigation, including the name of the victim, correct?
At this point, it's 16 hours later, sir. Not a few.
16 is a few hours, correct? I'm not talking about days later.
It was about 16 hours later, sir.
Correct.
Okay, is this exchange hostile enough to you? Again, this is cross, this is fine, but imagine this being direct examination. What do you think?
It's not going to declare that hostile.
Okay.
And you identified John O'Keefe as the Boston police officer who is fallen in the yard at 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
You also informed, if you will skip to page 2529, you also informed these same folks, these same high school buddies that, quote, all the powers that be want answers ASAP, correct?
Yes.
You knew, Trooper Proctor, that there was brass that wanted this case wrapped up quickly and efficiently. Isn't that right?
Objection.
Oh, well, is that what you were thinking?
No, the people wanted answers, sir.
They didn't just want answers, they wanted answers ASAP. What does ASAP mean?
That's as soon as possible.
Right. And you were texting this to your high school friends, again, 16 hours into this investigation, right?
Correct.
And you knew at that time, Trooper Proctor, that this was not going to implicate in any way, shape, form, or fashion another cop, correct?
Correct.
In this text exchange, let's turn to 2532, actually.
Before they get to some of this fun stuff coming up that is so ridiculous and despicable, it seems like this guy, he really believes this, or he's trained to say it like he believes it. He thinks that coming to this conclusion after 16 hours is okay. That that no cops involved in the death of John O'Keefe. It's fine after 16 hours. It's 16 hours.
And he's telling the big issue. He's telling high school buddies about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even know at that time who was notified, who about that. We don't know what was going on. We don't know what had been done. He's the lead investigator, but at this point, he's still not hostile in terms of this is reversed and he has to be called by the defense in the second trial, this would not be considered a hostile witness because of his demeanor.
So, and to take Alan Jackson's side of this, if it is direct, he's laying a pretty good foundation for most of these questions already. So he hasn't gotten to the point where, isn't it true? Where, those kinds of questions are going to be shut down if they are on direct. So far, I don't see his tact being a problem on direct if he ends up bringing this guy as his witness.
I agree. I think the judge could say this is foundational, and he can ask a direct question. It sounds like cross to get through it. I think she could easily say that.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
You have that in front of you?
I do.
In this text exchange at 10:56 p.m., your buddy Bird writes, "I'm sure the owners of the house will receive some shit." Correct?
Correct.
How did you take that to mean? Did you take that to mean that he could get in trouble?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what my friend was getting at.
Well, you had some idea.
Yeah, I maybe.
That the owners of the house isn't going to get any shit for this, right?
That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, you interpreted it like he's not going to get in any trouble. He's not going to be a suspect, correct?
Correct.
And he's not going to be implicated in any way. Is that right?
Correct.
And your answer was one word, correct?
Yes.
What was that word?
Nope.
And then you followed that up with an explanation as to why you said no, didn't you?
That wasn't the explanation why I said nope. I simply said homeowner was a Boston cop too, meaning Mr. O'Keefe was a Boston cop. The homeowner was a Boston cop as well.
The question that preceded your answer, nope, the homeowner's a Boston cop too, was the homeowner's going to get some shit for this, correct?
That's not what I meant with that text.
That's what you wrote.
Okay, is that believable? That Jackson is connecting the two thoughts, which I think is the reasonable interpretation. Proctor is saying, no, those are totally separate thoughts. It's not the homeowner's going to take some shit. Nope, he's a Boston cop too. Those are totally disconnected. That's his position.
I don't believe that. I mean, I don't
That's not
believe
what
that.
that's not what I meant, sir.
All right, let's take it in order. Question. Oh goodness, the homeowner's going to get some shit for this. Answer, nope. Next text. He's a Boston cop too. That doesn't sound like an explanation for your nope.
No, that's just saying he's a Boston cop as well. Mr. O'Keefe is a
And that's
Boston
why
cop.
he's not going to get any shit. Correct, Trooper Proctor?
Well, he's not going to receive any shit, sir, because Mr. Albert, the homeowner, had nothing to do with Mr. O'Keefe's death.
And you knew this 16 hours into your investigation.
Yes.
Less than a day.
Yes.
To your satisfaction.
To my satisfaction
And
and
you
to the
hadn't
members
been
of my
to the
unit.
crime scene?
So let him finish. We didn't get finish your answer.
To my satisfaction and to all the members of my unit who investigated that day.
Objection. Calls for speculation.
So I'm going to let it stand. Trooper Proctor, you have to keep your voice up, okay? Jurors need to hear you way back there.
Yes, ma'am.
The fact of the matter is, you hadn't been to the crime scene by the time you wrote this text, correct?
Correct.
You hadn't been inside the home, correct?
No.
You had you had questioned a grand total of 3 percipient witnesses at this point, correct?
Yes.
And 2 of the 3 were named McCabe, right?
Correct.
And 1 of the 3 was named Albert, correct?
Yes.
And it's against that backdrop that you wrote, nope, the homeowner's not going to get any shit because he's a cop, right?
That's not what I meant by that.
At 10:57, Bird goes on to write, he, the homeowner, must have been a puddle to accomplish that. And then he writes, who's the homeowner? And then he writes, I hope not, but I can see it. Correct?
Yes.
A puddle means drunk, correct?
That's a term for it, yes.
In other words, Bird wrote that the homeowner must have been so drunk, so wasted to have killed him. Correct?
Objection.
Do you know what that means? Do you know what that text means?
Just the puddle part, Your Honor. that term.
All right, so he can answer that.
And the puddle part means drunk or wasted, right?
Yes.
And what Bert actually wrote was, he must have been a puddle to accomplish that, correct?
That's what he wrote.
And then you write back, quote, she waffled him. I looked at his body at the hospital, right?
Correct.
You used the phrase waffled about a Boston police officer who had fallen in the snow and died in someone's yard. And you decided to use the word waffled him, correct?
Objection.
So sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Jackson.
Did you answer, she waffled him, I looked at his body at the hospital?
I did answer that, yes.
And then Bird questioned, she waffled him, correct?
Yes.
And then you responded, he was banged up. Is that right?
Yes.
Then a person with the phone number 0095 wrote, I thought he was drunk. Did he get beat up? You see that?
I do.
And you wrote, nope. Is that right?
Correct.
Yet again, this is before 11 o'clock at night on January 29th, 2022, some 16 hours into your investigation. Is that right?
Yes.
So before you ever went to the crime scene, before you ever went into the house, only having interviewed 3 folks, you had this case nice and wrapped up, didn't you?
Yes. Based on the evidence my office uncovered that day, the one shoot discovered at the scene, the one shoot at the hospital, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries, the broken taillight pieces underneath the snow.
Super Proctor, I didn't ask for an explanation. I asked.
It's interesting. He mentions the magic taillight pieces, which we continue to collect here at Justice Served TV. We know how that played out, and we know there was nothing found that night, and we know that it trickled in over the period of the next couple of weeks. These 45 pieces, right? But he's immediately bringing up for this jury, that as a important piece of evidence in the first 16 hours to come to the conclusion that A, he wasn't beat up. B, the homeowner, the cop, was a puddle. A new term for me. I'd never heard puddled before, meaning just
trial. Yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Can I just interrupt on something? Listening to this a second time, the people in this group chat, some identified by nicknames, some identified by number, seem to know an awful lot more about the case. Just in that little clip we just played, I thought he was drunk. Okay. Did he get beat up? So it sounds like that there'd been communication before, either in this group chat about the facts of the case, or on the phone, or with somebody else.
Could be. When he first references
more in the backdrop of what these people know when they're texting this.
When he references the puddling the first time, which was a two or three texts before, just within minutes, assuming, he mentions the puddled part. That was confirmed. So he knew that the homeowner was drunk. He got that information. Then he's bringing it back to say, well, I thought he was drunk, meaning he didn't know what he was doing, or he was somehow involved, but not the cause of the death.
Yeah, but he's using puddle for the homeowner.
Yes.
Then
yes.
he says with John O'Keefe, I thought he was drunk. I thought he got beat up.
Yeah.
I referenced the drunk part in the way I'm listening to it, 2 separate people. That O'Keefe was drunk and the homeowner was puddled or drunk.
Right. Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think that these guys, these buddies, probably he could have called him that morning. These texts took place at 10 o'clock the next night.
Right.
As they say, 16 hours later. So yeah, they could have conversations earlier during the day saying, "Oh man, you won't believe this case I'm working on." Blah blah blah. Right.
Yeah, right. And we don't know about them, or they didn't find them, or they're there and they're not relevant to the way Alan Jackson's doing the cross examination.
Yeah, that could be. But I doubt it. If they were meaty enough, we'd probably bring them in.
Yeah, but it's clear to me that this group of 9, he is one of them. He's known as Chip, or Officer Proctor, apparently, knew a lot more about what was going on. And remember, the medical examiner, I don't think, has called this death anything at this point.
No.
But And that's what's real. So he's got the one shoe based on the one shoe at one location, one shoe at another, some bruising, some injuries, and he brings up the taillight.
Yeah, those taillight pieces. Yeah, so it's such a confirmation bias situation where it sounds as if they've created a narrative, and now 16 hours in, let's make everything cram into that narrative.
Right. Right.
And the real question, though, Linda, is if you're sitting on the jury, you aren't into this stuff as we have been, as the folks following this case may have been. Does this make an impression on you? Are you buying this? Do you think, oh, that's reasonable to me? He's seems to have what he needs to come to that conclusion.
No, because I haven't heard anything about the circumstances of the case. And now I know he's texting with friends, and I'm a little suspect of him. This is a good cop texting with friends.
Yeah, that disturbs me. I don't know what the average Joe juror is going to make of that, whether they care or not. And are they going to suggest, to them, hey, 16 hours, come on, how much time does it take to figure out what happened in this case? I don't know. I don't know if the average juror is going to make those leaps.
Well, I guess they would say, if in fairness to the prosecution case at this point, if you were on the jury, you'd say, okay, I'm waiting for the ring camera that's going to show me, right, the accident, because in this day and age of everything, he has us all wrapped up because he must have some video of it happening, right? Because everybody has ring cameras. Mm-hmm. And then so maybe you give a little more credibility here, but then you're going to start hearing some more stuff. And I think that's where the jurors are going to say, eyebrows up.
Let's see if some of that comes up.
Did you, in your mind, have this case wrapped up? Was it cut and dry in your mind?
Yes.
Bird then writes, so the owner of the house was a woman cop that beat him, ? Right?
Yes.
And then you wrote, that's what I initially thought after talking to Canton paramedics. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you said, then I saw the guy, correct?
Correct.
So what you meant by that, Trooper Proctor, was according to you, based on your initial conversations with the paramedics, the first responders, you were under the impression that this was a beating death. He'd been beaten to death, correct?
The way it was given to me, sir, was
That's yes or
medical.
No? That's yes or no?
He's going to answer the question. If you want to withdraw the question, you can.
No, go ahead.
We entered this investigation with an open mind. It was given to me as a medical situation. And when we saw Mr. O'Keefe's body at the hospital with Sergeant Buchanan and I, we saw his injuries, and we were kind of working through how these injuries occurred.
As a matter of fact, both you and Sergeant Buchanan believed that he had suffered the injuries as a result of a physical altercation based on information you received from the paramedics initially, correct?
Initially, we didn't know what we had. We knew there was some significant injuries to Mr. O'Keefe. And we're still figuring out how those injuries occurred.
Well, you just testified. Initially, we didn't know what we had.
Right.
But 16 hours after the fact, you wrote the following sentence. That's what I initially thought after talking to Canton paramedics. Correct?
Correct.
So initially, you did think you knew what you had. A physical altercation leading to a death. Correct?
Correct.
So when you just said, initially we didn't know what we had, that wasn't quite true. You did at least have an idea of what you thought you had, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
All right.
He made his point. Here's what I think is interesting.
Yeah.
You've got this scenario that, at least in Trooper Proctor's mind, former Trooper Proctor's mind, was a beating that was the initial thought. Talk to the paramedics. My question then is, what changed your mind? Give me the exact pieces of evidence or information you learned that changed your mind.
And when he went to the house first, and he didn't go to the scene. Remember?
No, not then. No, not by then.
So who's giving him the information about who owns the house? Because he says initially he thought it was a female cop who owned the house that beat him up. Right? That's what he said.
Right.
What got me there is that he kept saying, no, that's not what I thought. And Alan Jackson had to keep prying and prying and prying to get him to admit that initially he and Buchanan both thought that there was a physical altercation leading to a death. And of course, they thought that after talking to medical personnel. And then they also thought that the house was owned by a woman cop. So, I mean, that's a lot of stuff right there that all of a sudden gets changed, right?
Right. And so he's making it sound like, well, then we saw Officer Proctor in the hospital and we started evaluating the injuries. Well, what about those injuries changes your mind that it was a beating? That's what I want to know, because it sounds to me like every one of those injuries would reinforce your belief there was a beating.
Right, right.
So I've never heard that question asked, and I would love to hear the answer. What did you learn that would change your mind from what you initially thought was a beating? What'd you learn? There's zero, but I've never heard that asked.
You were aware initially that John O'Keefe had suffered a 2-inch laceration to the back of his head, correct?
Yes,
That resulted in a skull fracture, correct?
correct.
He had a laceration over his right eye, small laceration just under the eyebrow, correct?
Yes,
Had a laceration on his nose. Is that right?
correct.
He had patterned scratches on his right arm, abrasions, scratches, correct?
Yes,
And he had no injuries below the neck.
not that I observed, sir.
Not a single broken bone, correct?
Not that I was aware of.
Not a single fracture, correct?
Not that I was aware of.
Not a single bruise below the neck, right?
Not that I observed.
Looks a lot like a physical altercation, doesn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Why is that not a valid question?
It should be a valid question. He's
Bird writes-
fine as to his beliefs, and he's a cop. And
Bear,
that's-
let's focus,
that's a valid
correct?
Yes,
Who's Bear?
that's another nickname I have.
Bear, Chip.
0095 writes, what does she waffled him mean? And then Bird writes, what's the story, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote, she hit him with her car. Is that right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen, in your experience, have you ever seen a pedestrian who was hit by a 6,000-pound car with no bruises? Ever?
The gears are turning.
They're trying.
The pedestrian strikes I've seen have been at high speeds,
And that's
60
enough
plus.
A person out of his shoe, right?
60 plus miles per hour. So I can't recall right now off the top of my head as far as injuries in the past pedestrian strikes I've attended.
Okay. So someone, you indicated on Monday, under examination by Mr. Lally, you've seen a shoe missing,
Correct.
pedestrian strikes, correct?
Yes.
Those are high speed, extremely high speed incidents, correct?
Yes.
60 plus miles an hour, right?
I can't recall all the pedestrian strikes I've been to as far as the miles per hour the vehicle is traveling.
You just said it.
Let me ask you the question again.
Yeah, he said usually they're
Have you
60 or so.
ever, yes or no, have you ever, in your experience, seen a vehicle pedestrian incident in which the pedestrian has no bruises?
Objection.
Have you seen that?
I can't recall.
See, now here, let me interrupt myself.
Yeah, good time.
Well, you know, we've had this discussion many times about the objections and the grounds, right? That objection could have been on a number of different grounds. I'm assuming it was asked and answered, but I'm not sure. And she just doesn't even respond. She says to the witness, "Can you answer that?" That is a mess if this ever were an appellate issue, because nobody knows what the grounds were and nobody knows what she ruled on, if anything.
But what I get from this is that, you know, he has said he's seen only high-speed passenger strikes. He can't passenger, hits or
Yeah,
whatever.
60 miles or more.
He can't remember right now anything else. But he says he and Buchanan go to the hospital, even though they talk to medical personnel, and they believed as a result of the talking to medical personnel. And he said there was a 2-inch laceration, behind the head that led to a skull fracture, a little laceration below the eye, a little laceration on the nose, but there was no bruising below the neck and no broken bones. But when he goes to the hospital with Buchanan, he says, because of the injuries, I see how bruised he is, I now believe it was, she waffled him or something to that effect. That doesn't make any sense because you're not going to be seeing those injuries if they aren't there.
Yep, and you're not going to attribute whatever you see above the shoulders to some injury or contact below the waist or below the shoulders. I
Correct.
mean, it doesn't make any sense, but not a surprise. And now he's talking about the shoe. Remember, if a shoe is, you hear that, it's almost a cliche. You get these unfortunate motor vehicle versus pedestrian cases. Somebody always loses a shoe or two. You're literally knocked out of your shoes, right? So,
I've seen other cases where a shoe can be off in a fight. A shoe can be off easily.
In a fight, I could see that.
Or in snow and you're trying to get up and sometimes I've had it where I can't get my foot out of the snow and my shoe is not, my sneaker is not that tight or it's gotten wet and it comes off.
So in this case, Jackson is asking basically, okay, you're saying it was a motor vehicle strike. What type of injuries, what type of speed have you seen that causes somebody to lose their shoe? And I would suggest, yeah, if you're bumped into by a car, you're not going to lose your shoe. I think that's where he's going. But let's see.
After you wrote, she hit him with her car, 5051 writes, oh, Jesus. And Bird writes, okay, that's fucked up, correct?
Correct.
And then you wrote what?
Intentional or not?
Intentional or not? Is that right?
Yes.
Your words.
Correct.
0095 then chimes in, gotcha. He was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him? Question mark, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote what?
That's another animal we won't be able to prove.
That's another animal we won't be able to prove, correct?
Correct.
Trooper Proctor, you knew that there were going to be things in this case, even 16 hours into this, that you just admitted you would have zero proof of, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
Did you mean by that statement that this was one of several things that you knew we would not be able to prove?
That statement, that's another animal we won't be able to prove, references the intentional or not part.
You didn't care at that point when you wrote that, you didn't care what you could or could not prove, did you?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Isn't that what you meant?
No.
You had a narrative that you had developed and you would pursue it no matter what the proof was. That's what you meant by that statement, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask it differently, Mr. Chairman.
Did you mean by that, thank you, Your Honor, I didn't mean to step on your words. Did you mean by that statement that you were going to pursue this case no matter what the proof might be?
What I meant by that statement was if Miss Reed backed into Mr. O'Keefe intentionally or not.
Interestingly, though, that statement came on the heels of he was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him. And you wrote in response to that question, that's another animal we won't be able to prove. Correct?
That's not what I was responding to. I was responding to the intentional or not part.
So you were responding to your own statement.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't disbelieve that. That's reasonable.
0095 then writes, what's the name of the Canton cop living in Canton? The other one involved. Correct?
Yes.
In other words, that person was asking, tell me the name of the homeowner. Isn't that right?
Yes.
The guy that's the cop, right?
Correct.
And you ignored that question for a second time. Is that right?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, not one time, not once in this entire group chat did you disclose the name Brian Albert, did you?
I don't believe so, no.
You were actively trying to hide Brian Albert's name, at least from this conversation.
Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that what you were trying to do?
Absolutely not.
But you had no problem sharing John O'Keefe's name with your buddies from high school, right?
Correct.
And you had no problem sharing Karen Reed's name with your buddies from high school, correct?
I don't believe I named the defendant.
Not yet, you didn't. Later in the chat.
Okay, correct.
5051 then writes, the BPD have any jurisdiction here because it was their own? Question mark. Is that right?
Yes.
And a few texts later, if you look down a few texts, at about 11 o'clock, you see a text that starts, nah, cat.
I do, sir, yes.
You responded, quote, nah, N-A-H, nah, cat, K-A-T-T. It's the total opposite. They have to recuse themselves. Same with Canton. Correct?
That text ends as they have to recuse themselves.
You then text back. I'm sorry. Can I have a moment?
Yes.
Flip the next page.
I see where you're at, sir.
How did you end that text?
Same with Canton.
Meaning Canton has to recuse itself also, correct?
That was my understanding.
So by 11 p.m. on January 29th, 2022, there was no question in your mind, Trooper Proctor, that the Canton Police Department was recused from this investigation in all particulars, correct?
That they had taken a step back from participating, yes.
Right. Well, there's one way to put it. They've taken a step back from participating. Another way to put it is they recused themselves completely, correct?
Correct.
They were not going to be, at least in your mind, they were not to be involved in any way, just like Boston PD was not to be involved in any way. Is that right?
Objection.
Is that what you were thinking?
It was my understanding they were not going to be involved.
This is important to note that other than a couple of communities within the state of Massachusetts, most communities, including Stoughton and Dedham and Canton, anytime there is a death, a homicide investigation, they are hands off to the Massachusetts State Police. So even though Alan Jackson here is making it sound like there was maybe some reason they recused themselves, it had to happen that way. That's just the way they are set up. What's your take on that?
Yeah, but apparently there was a conscious decision made that they had to be recused because of the conflict here, just like Boston PD. So it may have been a double reason because I think there was some communications about that. They couldn't do anything else because they did respond to the scene. They were doing an investigation. He is coming to a conclusion about an investigation. So if they were supposed to call the state police, it should have been right away. He's going to the hospital. He's making conclusions. What I really liked about this cross was one thing right here. He said, Alan Jackson said, you had no problem disclosing the John O'Keefe's name because you weren't disclosing Brian Albert's name. Right. And he says, you also had no problem disclosing Karen Reed. Then former Trooper Proctor, now Mr. Proctor, says, I don't believe I disclosed Karen Reed's name. And then Alan Jackson said, you did later in the chat. Yeah, and there's a pause. Yet. And he has to look. He said, yeah, I did. It's really wonderful when the attorney cross-examining knows the evidence and the discovery better than the witness on the stand. And it's right after that, about 30 seconds later after that, that you see Proctor taking a drink of water. Now, let me tell you, you learn from your psychological experts that when a witness on the stand takes a drink, not like me, I'm taking my Dunkin'.
Yeah, well, thanks for reminding me.
That your mouth is getting a little bit dry. You know, you're starting to hit points. You're starting to make your points, right? So you have to be, as a lawyer, aware of these little cues or clues.
It's a poker match. It's a poker game.
It's a poker tell.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, the other thing I like about it is it's a tease for the jury. They go, oh, really? He mentioned her name as well. Interesting. How is that going to play out? Let's listen to just a little bit more of this.
Now, if we could turn to page 2537. "5051 writes, but I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cops, correct?
Yes.
And Bird writes, something stinks, correct?
Correct.
And then Trooper Proctor, you responded, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Isn't that right?
That's right.
So in that text exchange, you were saying, yeah, we're out to make it cut and dry, correct?
No.
You didn't write, yeah, we're going to follow the evidence wherever it takes us? You didn't, did you?
I did not write that.
You didn't write, yeah, we're going to make sure that we investigate this thing fully and thoroughly before making any decisions? You didn't say that, did you?
I did not.
You wrote, yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And the reason you wrote that is because you knew, as the text above it says, this has to be cut and dry because it involves cops, right?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that. Is that the reason you wrote it?
No, Your Honor.
And then you indicated, we're going to put serious charges on the girl. Who did you mean by the girl, by the way?
The defendant.
Karen Reed?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So the way that you were going to make it cut and dry, pretty simple. Just pin it on the girl, right?
Objection.
Is that right?
Absolutely not. Follow the facts and the evidence from that
Sorry.
day on the 29th, and everything led to Miss Reed hitting Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle.
But that wasn't the question that you were answering, was it? We're going to follow the evidence and make sure we do this thoroughly. The question you were answering was, I assume you guys, you, Trooper Proctor, and your team are going to, quote, make it cut and dry, since it involves cops, meaning Brian Albert, correct?
Incorrect. Doesn't matter to me if the homeowner's a cop, if the victim's a police officer. Myself and everyone in my office investigated this case that Saturday, had an overwhelming amount of evidence that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe. So it didn't matter to us what their occupation was.
We'll see.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Dun, dun,
I
dun.
mean, that text, I forgot about that. We're going to make it cut and dry I assume you're going to make it cut and dry since it involves cops. Wow.
And if Proctor had said in his responsive text what he just tried to say on the stand to save himself, would have been fine. But he did not. He mentions going to be some serious charges against the girl.
Right. Right.
And that's why I wanted to look at this part of his testimony. Everybody gets hung up with the salaciousness of, him making personal comments about Karen Reed and yucking it up about her physical ailments. Very, it's outrageous. It's wrong. No jury is going to like this guy for that reason and many others. But this stuff that we just covered is the foundational information that this jury has to absorb and decide whether or not they believe the investigation was biased from day one,
Right.
from hour one.
Right. And everyone in his office who works for him, of course, came to the same conclusion he did, even though he never went to the scene, didn't interview. He interviewed like 3 witnesses, and quite frankly, Michael, you and I and everyone on that jury knows if there's a dead body in your front lawn, knock, 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 and then may I search your house? And if they say no, you come back with a warrant, because the warrant itself, they say they don't have probable cause. Yes, they do. There's a dead body on the front lawn of somebody. They want to know, and it looks like it was an altercation. It looks like he was beaten up. You want to know, is there any evidence in the house that connects it?
Yeah, you don't have to go shopping for judges to get that warrant signed. That's not a biggie. And we do know that one of the officers went in, talked to Brian Albert briefly, never went beyond the foyer area, but obviously not what was necessary. And I think it's funny. One of the other investigating officers, I think it was Lieutenant, I want to say Gallagher. He talked about nobody came out of the house. None of the neighbors came out. It's just this bizarre scene unfolding at 5:30 in the morning with rescue vehicles and lights flashing, and people are just like, "Hey, what's going on, honey? I don't know. Go back to bed." It just makes no sense. None.
Not even your own house. Not even your house.
Yeah, if I'm telling you right now, if I open the window, pull back the drape at 5:30, and that's going on in my front lawn, I'm out there. And anybody with their right mind would be out there. And every juror or potential juror would be out there. So anyway,
I think this was quite frankly, this is really a very important part of this cross-examination. It is so important. It's so important because it really does give the foundation. He had nothing to work on. He goes to the hospital. He doesn't see, he says by his bruising, he doesn't see any bruising. He doesn't talk to any medical personnel that says he's hit by a car. He has no medical examiner's report on this. And yet he concludes that indeed this was a strike by the SUV driven by Karen Reed. He's got no ring camera. He's got no camera coverage. He's got nothing.
He's a genius. He's really brilliant. He is Inspector Gadget. He's able to put it all together with so little information. It's amazing. So anyway, we thought we would just kind of dip our toe into that as we look forward to what's going to be his next performance, however it unfolds. Prosecution bringing him on, hoping to water down how horrible he is, or the defense bringing him on as one of their primary witnesses and dealing with him however they have to. But that information we just heard is coming out again.
It's definitely coming out, because that was not an real adversarial cross-examination.
No, had a couple of minutes, but no. The thing about Alan Jackson's, and one of our viewers mentioned this word, one of my favorite words, fricative. The fricatives. Fricative is almost an automatopoeia. Automatopoeia is a word like bash or crash or crunch, where the word itself kind of sounds like the action. Fricative, bam. Fricative, it means you're speaking with a very pointed way of enunciating the words, almost like click, 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 fricative. And Alan Jackson's a master at doing that.
And he's got that perfect posture. He reminds me of my dog Tubi. I hate to say that, not that because he's
that's a weird compliment.
No, that's a great compliment if you know that. But he's got that absolute perfect posture, and he's nothing is phasing him when it comes out. He takes the answer and he just goes from that. He listens to the answer and he goes from that. And he's able to turn that and get back to where he wanted to be when somebody's trying to wiggle.
And that's because he, like any good lawyer, has already anticipated the variety of answers he might get, and he knows where he's going to go depending on which answer comes his way. So it's a skill.
It definitely is a skill, and I don't even want to go to the jokes of Proctor. He's no longer cop Proctor. He's no longer Trooper Proctor. He's now Mr. Proctor. He's the Proctor Factor. Ooh, you know where that could lead us. I'm not going there.
Yep. So we'll see how it unfolds. We'll keep on this, of course, and the new fresh meat as it unfolds in this trial. So I'm Michael Bryant. So we'll get back to it again sometime soon, I'm sure. Try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. Together we are Justice Served TV. And please hit that like button. I'm going to wait for a second, let you hit that like button. Say it again, let you hit that like button. Subscribe, share, and then notify all. So when we're on next time again, you'll be able to come watch us.